Karl Marx. And if you're familiar with his writings, what he is actually proposing is called dialectical materialism. So he loves Hegel's dialectic and this progression, but remember, for Marx, being a materialist, he doesn't believe in souls or spirits or the non-material world. So what he's seeing is kind of like a materialistic evolutionary progression from simple to complex, and the same thing with human beings, starting off maybe more primitive, becoming more sophisticated. In a more primitive state, it's going to be more tooth and claw and everyone out for themselves. But as we mature and grow and evolve as a species, we're going to become more communal and collectively minded. And that is this idea of communism, right? This collective, communal sort of approach, not everyone out for themselves. So Marx loved Hegel's dialectic, he just hated his theology. He didn't want God to be a part of it. For Marx, history was the story of human struggle, specifically class struggle. And so this is going to trip you out. This is how most people know about Hegel's dialectic. It's from Marx. It's not even from Hegel. And so if we start with our thesis, and let's make it big, like let's do empire. We'll start at the time of the Roman Empire, just so you can see how this kind of works itself out. So in the Roman Empire, our thesis, or our top dog, would be the emperor. What's the antithesis of an emperor?
Peasant?
Even worse than a peasant, slave. Now, what Hegel believes happens in history is you get these movements. So you have this imperial, nobility, masters, and slaves. I mean, this is the great gross inequality in human history, where you have some people that have it all and some people who don't have nothing, including their own selves. But this moves into a synthesis, and this is what we would call like the feudal system. So we move out of the imperial system into the feudal system, but now each new synthesis becomes the new thesis of the next movement. So here in feudalism, we don't have an emperor, but we have a king. What's the antithesis of a king? You had it the first time. Peasant or serf. So these people aren't slaves, but they're bound to the land. So they're like semi-slaves. They don't have absolute freedom, but they don't have it as bad off as an actual slave. A king still has it pretty good, but not near as good as an emperor. So you see, both of them have kind of been modified a little bit towards the mean, towards the middle. And then the synthesis between these two, we get into like the merchant system, the formation of guilds, of these crafts, of trades, banking, all these sorts of things happen. People are actually buying titles that have enough capital or money. And so here we have I don't know if that's right, but the bourgeoisie, that's as close as I can get. Those are the people that own the means of production. They own the forests, they own the minerals, they own the rights to the lakes and rivers. And then the people that work for them, called the proletariat. These are like day laborers or people who work for pay. They give you some of their time and energy and strength, and in return you pay them money. So that's better than a serf. And once again, this is less than a king, but these people are still doing pretty good. Now this next synthesis, or this next movement, Hegel believed was going to be communism. But this is where I think he got it wrong. I mean, not Hegel, I'm sorry, Marx thought the culmination where we would have this great equality or equity would come in communism. I just think he got a little ahead of himself. Because I think what this is really producing isn't communism, but it's capitalism, where people are using capital to invest, make money, and what. So I'll do the rest in black, because now it's Blackburn, not Marx. I think what was actually happening was capitalism. What's the antithesis of capitalism? That's where I think the communism comes in. So if you can figure out what the synthesis is between capitalism and communism, you can kind of predict the next movement in human history, at least according to Marx, building off of Hegel. And I actually think it's exactly what we're seeing in our society right now. Yeah. What's in between capitalism and communism? Socialism. Anyone say Bernie, right? But another movement we're also seeing in our society as we speak is what's the antithesis to socialism? What's the opposite of coming together as a collective or working together in society for the common good? Anyone know this symbol? Anarchy. Where it's everyone for themselves. There is no external law or authority. And we see this huge anarchical movement happening in our culture as well. So you have these counterpoints, these movements. If you can tell what's going to come after these two, what's the synthesis between socialism and anarchy, that's quite the trick. And I personally believe it's this. We go back to a totalitarian state, a fascist state, because that's the only way to deal with anarchy, right? Absolute iron fist control. And then the process starts all over again. Everyone else is in subjugation, and then history unfolds, and you got the little cosmic loop happening all again. Freaky. You can apply this to so much stuff. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. I think I use the example of a movie, a black or a white movie, but really what you're seeing is a grayscale movie that has some black and white for highlight or contrast, but the reality is most of it's grayscale. That's where we're living. That's what we're seeing. Questions, comments on this? You guys are being so subdued.